Hey friends, it's Dimitri with Rubashka Streetwear. So as you can tell in front of me, I have a couple pieces of clothing and I wanted to explain something today, and that is choosing themes for your pieces and for your designs and styles. So a lot of stuff that you can make for your clothing brand, it can be centered around a theme or something, you know, grounded in history or culture. It doesn't necessarily have to be, something like very minimal or without meaning in a sense. Although certainly there are a lot of pieces that can fit that mold. And I'll give you an example. Here is a t-shirt I made a while back, and it just has a sniper on a roof and it has my logo on the side. So this doesn't really have a deeper meaning other than the picture or the design is really cool. I got this from a sniper manual, a US Army manual, and there's not really a deep meaning to it. It's just a cool photo. It's in black and white, and this has been a really popular seller. But when you are designing a bunch of stuff for your brand, you can definitely make it a little bit deeper, have it more meaning. You can also reference stuff like nostalgia and from your childhood, or other thematic elements. So here is a really popular one. This t-shirt is sliding. Here's a really popular one that I like to do, and a lot of other clothing brands do this. So I like to reference stuff from the Bible because that is a part of my belief system, and that is how I grew up. And I like to basically take bits and pieces from my childhood and kind of reinterpret them for my own purposes. And also, a lot of other brands have definitely referenced Christianity and other themes and elements from the Bible as well. There's tons of examples of this in particular streetwear brands, because a lot of people, they grew up with that influence. And if you live in the United States, it's also a very large percentage of people here adhere to that religion. So here's one piece that I did a while, I think this was from 2 or 3 years ago. And at first you might see this. This is the back of the t-shirt, and here's the front. The front of it features, so this was from an ad called Daisy Girl in, I think, in 1968 or something like that. Lyndon B. Johnson was running for president, and he made this really jarring ad of a girl in a field with daisies, and then she looks over and a nuclear blast happens. And this was a political ad, and it changed the climate of politics and political ads in general. So what I did with this is I took that historical element, which is very Cold War-esque, and it relates to the Cold War. But what I also did was I combined a Bible verse that might not be necessarily related to it in a sense, but I kind of made a fusion of it. And this is from Ecclesiastes, I think chapter 3. It talks about changes and seasons. And I felt that this verse was very relevant to the imagery there, although, in its context, it might not be. I left out the particular verse details because this is a snippet from a verse. And, sometimes you can't really just take out snippets and then apply it to that verse. But I thought the phrase was really cool. It's kind of, the phrase itself is kind of jarring, as you could tell, like time to love, a time to hate, a time for war, and a time for peace. So those kind of really sharp contrasts, war, peace, love, and hate, that was flowing with the theme of what I was going in the front, right? Because you have this innocent girl and then this nuclear explosion. It's two thematic elements that are in sharp contrast combining together. And when you do stuff like that, when you combine elements that are like total opposites to create a design, a lot of times it could be really popular because it's something that appeals to people a lot. This was also inspired by a song by this one band. I forgot the name of it, but they had a whole song about Ecclesiastes chapter 3, and this was a big line in it. And that song basically inspired the shirt as well. So this is one example of using, religious themes and stuff like that to create design. And this one was a really popular seller. I just have one example left. Sometimes I have stragglers like double XLs and smalls, and they're always lingering around until someone buys them. But this is just one I have laying around. Here is one of my most popular designs ever. This was from a biblical illustrator called Gustav Dorr. He's very famous for illustrating a lot of those like big heavy Bibles, and his illustrations are really detailed and cool. So what I did with this one was I took basically one element from a much larger drawing that he made, and in this drawing there's like demons and stuff flying around here. Now his original drawing is very cool and has like clouds and stuff, but for my purposes and for remixing the artwork, since this is in public domain, I simplified it and then I remixed it into my own sort of style. I took the main element that he made and it looks much cleaner, much simpler, and that's kind of like the look I like to go for a lot of times. And this one is inspired by Revelation chapter 6 in the Bible. That's, the last book of the Bible, where it talks about death on a pale horse. And the whole like fear of the end phrase, that is basically a reference to my childhood, because if you grew up in a religious household and you would read that book as a child, it might scare you at the time because you might not know the deeper meanings of it. And that's kind of where that phrase came from, fear of the end. And also in my brand, I really like to delve into these apocalyptic kind of end time themes, which is also a very large and popular subgenre of clothing in general. A lot of people have referenced apocalyptic themes. Obviously, we have a lot of apocalyptic and dystopian books and novels and movies all the time. Every year there's a new one coming out. And generally with the climate that we're in all the time, people kind of feel that presence of them living in perilous times, and that's been around for generations and generations. People always feel like that. And this is just my interpretation of that. So the cool thing about this design is that when I first released it, it was only in red, and that was referencing the blood moon and all that. But later on, I printed it in white to try out different colors, and it does work really, really well in white because it's a pale horse, right? But then again, if you want to make it in red, it's referencing the blood moon. That's also referenced in Revelation. So that's just some Bible stuff. But there's tiny little details like that work out really well for this design. And this has been one of the best sellers ever that I've ever made. We sold thousands and thousands of this design. There was also a reference to the actual part in the Bible where it's at, Revelation 6. I would print it in the tag. On the very first batches of this, I did that. So if you have one of those are kind of more rare. So that like the verse was kind of in there, printed on the tag. I stopped doing that though later on because of technical issues. It's just easier to print one cohesive tag set. I have one tag for crew necks and hoodies and one tag for t-shirts, and I don't really vary off of that anymore unless it's a special occasion shirt like a anniversary shirt. Here's the most recent design I made. Some of the designs I make, they might not really have an overt meaning. Like this is very vague and this can mean anything. I kind of like to make designs that are based on choose your own adventure in a sense. Like the sniper shirt, like there really isn't any messaging behind this. It's just a cool design. But there are designs where this one is also a little bit vague and it's choose your own adventure. But when I was designing it, there is some references that I made or some thematic elements that I use. So this one is also referencing the Bible, and it's in Ephesians, where it talks about how we as people, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against spirits and principalities and higher powers. And this is essentially what that skull and kind of a scary imagery is representing. It's like there's higher powers that we can't see that are really pulling the strings and they're controlling our country. That's kind of like the fun theme that I was going for that. And it might be, this one's more of an esoteric kind of thing. So maybe unless you watch this video or know me personally, you wouldn't really understand kind of my thought process and my fun ideas behind this. But you don't need to understand any of that. You can enjoy it for what it is, just like the sniper shirt and a lot of other pieces I make. They don't always have to have a deeper meaning. Another super popular design that I made is my AK-47 t-shirt. There's a video about that. That does not have a deeper meaning. It's just AK-47 is a very popular Soviet gun, and obviously it fits in with the Cold War theme. But these three pieces that I showed you, they do have a little bit of a deeper meaning. They do reference stuff from my childhood. They do reference obviously religious themes. And this is something that you can do for your clothing brand. You can reference lots of cultural themes, religious themes, historical themes. All of those things are very popular to reference if it makes sense for what you're trying to do, because people can basically latch onto them easier and they have something to relate to it. Even in this piece by itself, without knowing any background of the design, someone could like it because maybe they feel like, you know, their country is basically under attack, which is kind of what's demonstrated here. And obviously the flag upside down is a symbol of distress. The cool thing about this design as well is that you, like I said, choose your own adventure. You can view it from many different political angles. Maybe on one side of the aisle you think this set of people is destroying the country, and then on another side of the aisle you think another set of people is destroying the country. So that's kind of like a general background and kind of information about some of the designs. They have some deep meanings, some not, some referencing things in the past. And that's what I like to do when I design. I like to do that. Some of my designs even, I hide little details and stuff like that that you might not catch. And that's also a really fun thing that you can do as a designer. You can hide little references and details that people might not notice unless they really have an eye for it, or like I said, they could be esoteric, so only a small number of people can really understand what's going on. So yeah, that's some of my design philosophy. That's some things I like to do for fun. And if you guys want to do this kind of thing in your brand, definitely go for it. It's a lot of fun, and I hopefully you got some value of this video, and I'll catch you guys later. Thanks.